And then let's say 30% from subs. Flat HP about 5k. Shield, or maybe it's not as big actually. I don't know. Yeah, I forgot how low her base HP was. That kind of fucks with this, doesn't it? Because there's a bigger portion of her HP that's coming from the flat stuff. So the shield and the healing, right? At talent level 13 is 1905 plus 15.3% of max HP times 1.75 if you hold, which you usually do. And then the healing is 1411 plus 11.34% of total HP. Yeah, so both the healing and the shielding are about 4.3% bigger. Yeah. Okay, never mind then. I'll put it in somewhat useful. Because, again, right? Higher healing matters more on low healing characters. This additional 200 healing per proc, she gets, what, 6 procs? Is 6 procs right, chat? Or is it 7? Does it count the initial hit? So that's what, like 1.2k HP? On a character that doesn't heal that much, having more 1.2k more HP I think matters a bit more. It's not that big of a deal, but it does matter a lot more than with Barbara, Jean, or Chi-Chi, right? I don't know. She's like somewhere in between these two. I think you can make an argument for either. So Zhongli base HP is a lot higher, right? So it's going to matter a lot more. Base HP is 13,662 versus 14,695. A lot more, a bit more, I guess. He gets a bit less HP percent though, usually. I mean, he gets TOM, but you tend to run like crit rate on the last slot. So you can proc Fav. And then his shield value is a talent level 10. 2711 plus 23% of max HP times 1 plus 20% shield strength from TOM, and then up to 25 from this. Generally, on average, is closer to like 5 or 10. Let's do 10. So 30%, and then times 1.5 because it's a Geo Shield. Again, it's really a question of breakpoints, right? It doesn't matter that much in terms of how much shielding you have. But there are situations where it will matter. So let's say, for example, enemies are hitting you for attacks that do, like, 5,700 damage, right? Two attacks, 3 attacks, 4 attacks would break the shield if he's level 80. But it would not break it if he's level 90. Which means that the 5th attack, right, would stagger you if you're level 80, but would not stagger you if you're level 90 because you still have a 1k HP shield left. that's like the one situations where it can actually be significant. But it's not that big of a deal. Like, the main thing that'll make his shield bigger is the talent levels and actually building HP on him. Not getting him from 80 to 90. And it's pretty expensive and you don't get any damage from it. And his shield does tend to generally not break that often. It only breaks in like specific situations with very aggressive enemies. So I'm gonna put him here, but I do think there's an argument in some situations where it can be here. Xinyan, I don't know, here I guess. Albedo goes in here. It matters more than the attack scalars, more than Noel too, but it's not like an insanely big deal. Next up, Ganyu goes in here. Same reasoning as every other attack scaling carry. Hu Tao goes in here. Same reasoning as every other non-attack scaling carry. Rosaria in here. I mean, a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, I think. Alright, Kazuha. Kazuha goes here. There are situations where Kazuha actually has a fairly significant amount of talent damage. I mean...
Level up completed.
Even, like... just in general, right? Kazuha does have a fairly large amount of talent damage compared to some of the other characters. Which makes it so that there's a bit more of a reason to level... a bit less of a reason to level 90 him. But he also does tend to get overall a higher amount of swirls than a character like Sucrose, if you're playing him in... or if you're playing Sucrose in a team where she's not on field. The thing is, like... Kazuha's personal damage doesn't tend to be as much of your team DPS as these characters' transformative damage, right? And so because of that, it matters a bit less to level 90 him, but it still does matter quite a bit. So I think he'd be like at the top of this, probably. Doesn't Xinyan get increased value of levels due to Burgeon teams? Unfortunately not. And the main problem with that, Xinyan's shield only applies Pyro when it's not destroyed. But it is not a Dendro shield, meaning it takes full damage from Burgeons. Which means if you're building her for Burgeon damage, your shield breaks in like one Burgeon. And then you stop applying Pyro. It's more than one, but it doesn't last very long. And because it's her only way to apply off-field Pyro, then she's just not very good in Burgeon teams. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. Ayaka goes in here. Yoimiiya goes in here. Sayu. It depends on the team a lot. If you're playing her in teams where she actually triggers reactions, like if you're playing her as the fucking driver, the true driver, a real driver in a like quicken team, like an aggravate team, or I mean, I guess a taser team, anything like that, then it matters a lot. But if you're just playing her as your animal option because you don't have Jean in like Farina teams, stuff like that, then it doesn't really matter that much. Because a pretty significant portion of her healing comes from her EM. And even when it's less than half, it's still there, and it makes it so that, like, on top of on top of the, like, of levels only increasing the attack scaling portion of the healing, not the flat healing, it also doesn't increase the EM portion of the damage. Or of the healing, sorry. So it matters even less than some other, like, attack scaling healers. It's still not completely useless though, but yeah. So I think because of her possibility of actually triggering reactions, I'll put it here. But because that's not the only team where she can be played, then it's not going to be here. I mean, Sara has a pretty similar thing to Bennett, where it does matter a little bit to have higher base attack, but it's really not that big of a deal. However, unlike Bennett, she has a bit more personal damage. When you play her in Raiden teams, right? I don't think she's very good in aggravate teams. And even when you do play her in aggravate teams, she doesn't apply a lot of electro. So it's probably not enough to justify putting her here. I think I'll go here. It's not useless, but it's not your priority at all. Yeah, sure, I guess. Itto! Itto, pretty similar to Noel, right? You benefit from it a lot more than attack scalers do. At least a bit more than attack scalers do. Because you gain a decent amount. But it's not that much more, right? Because he is also an attack scaler. He's just an indirect attack scaler. He, like, double dips into Ascension stat by gaining higher base attack and higher base defense. But, like, these characters, like, they're at the bottom of this category, right? But also they're carries, which means that they'll do a higher portion of your overall team DPS, which justifies them not being that low either. Yeah, I don't know. Gorou, no real point. The only thing that actually increases with Gorou, right, is, I mean, C4 healing, but we've already talked about how this is fucking dog shit anyways. And personal damage. The actual buff doesn't depend on his defense. Or his attack, obviously. So it's really just about the personal damage you get from this. And it's not a lot. It's not completely useless, right? Like, he is a direct defense scaler, but his damage is just such a low portion of your team DPS, because you can't just build him for full damage. You still have to go for, you still have to give him enough ER and shit like that. It's just, there's no real point. You can do it if you really like him, I guess, but that's really the only reason. Shenhe. It's, again, very similar thing to Bennett, where it does increase the amount of icy quill damage that she does, but that isn't even as impactful as on your carry directly. So she goes here for sure. Right, and like, if you have multiple characters that are in here on your teams, as a general rule, the one that does more damage is the one you should 90 first. Okay? Why is Chi-Chi done there? Because attack scaling healers in general just gain so little from being increased from level 80 to 90 in terms of healing. On top of that, healers that already heal to full generally don't need level 90 to heal to full. Yunjin, again, similar to Shenhe. Yoimiiya, probably goes here. Yaya's, like, percentage of damage coming from Quicken depends a lot on what enemies you're fighting. In single target, or from aggravate, sorry. In single target, you have a lot more of your damage coming from talent. Whereas in AoE, it's a lot more from from Aggravate because of the way that her ICD works, right? If her E is only striking one target, then it has standard ICD. But if it's striking multiple targets, the way that standard ICD works makes it so that if you're striking one target and then another, then your ICD is over for your first target. So if you strike the first target again, this time it'll trigger reaction again, right? On top of that, if you look at the damage that's being taken by each enemy, they always take full damage from burst, and burst triggers on every hit, right? It triggers aggravate on every hit. Although it does also have higher talent, but still. In general, levels matter a bit more in AoE situations than in single target situations, but they always do matter a decent amount. And again, this is assuming you're playing her in a Quicken team. If you're playing her in aggravate teams, then she would be in here instead. Next, Ayato. Ayato does have some HP scaling, but it's fake. He goes here. Actually, that's not entirely true. The thing about Ayato is, as of right now, I think that in most teams, he's just a strict downgrade to Neville. That being said, there is one team where I do consider him to be better than Neville. And that's in Nilo teams, where this shit matters a lot. In Nilo teams, he's here. So yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. No one plays Ayato in Nilo. You'd be surprised. It's not that popular, but like, Nilo mains, like people who play Nilo a lot, actually do this somewhat often. Like, those of them who have Ayato, and that like actually care about meta stuff and shit, was a full team with Ayato. It's generally Ayato, Nilo, Nahida, and then healer. Is Ayato EM in that team? Ideally, yes, but you do need enough ER to burst every rotation, so it's... You have to make sure you have that. So sometimes it's ER, EM.
Level up completed.
It's a lot more popular with Zyphos than with other weapons, which is very funny. Zyphos is an Ayato weapon, true. Yelan! Probably goes here, I think. Heizou, it depends on the team. Probably goes here because he is played somewhat often in like either Salad or Quicken. Even in Taser teams, right? He does trigger a decent amount of reactions. But yeah. Tichneti goes here. Right? Very similar to characters like Sino, like Kutsing. You got Quicken, and it's bulk. Collei, I think it goes here. Because it is important, but it's also not. Like, when you're playing her in Quicken teams, it matters. But she doesn't do that much damage overall anyway, so it doesn't even matter that much. Like, I'm pretty sure people tend to build her with attack sends, not EM sends, because she just doesn't trigger that many Quickens, or that many spreads. And then in Nilo teams, she doesn't tend to be the one reacting. Like, she'll probably get maybe between 2 and 4 blooms per rotation, but it's not, like, that great. It's good to level her to 90 if you actually play her, but it doesn't matter that much because she's not triggering as many blooms as a lot of the, like, Kokomi or Ayato and Nilo teams, and she's not triggering that many spreads in Quicken team. So yeah. Maybe the explanation for Zhongli and no real point. You get about, like, you get a shield that goes from about 22k HP to about 23k HP. Alright, Dori! I mean, if you play her in Hyper Bloom or Quicken, then yeah, but like, also, who does? So I don't think I can justify putting her here or here. Kanaka is unironically here, because I think her only real team is Nilo teams. And she is actually fairly decent in those teams. So, yeah, she goes there. Nahida. Yeah, Nahida goes here. She triggers a decent amount of spread damage. There are teams where her spread damage is a lot lower. So when you're looking mainly at teams where you're playing double Hydro Hyper Bloom, the quicken up time tends to be a lot lower. So you don't get as many spreads. You do still tend to get some, because like if you're on-fielding her, right? Her E will generally trigger off of you triggering a reaction with Nahida. And if you're triggering that on an Electrocharge target, you get the quicken, and then your E triggers from triggering that quicken, and it guarantees a spread. So it's nice, but yeah. Why is Collei not in the top tier? It's mainly because if you do play her in Nilo teams, she doesn't trigger that many of the reactions. And if you're playing her in Quicken teams, she also doesn't trigger that many reactions. Or like, it is going to be an increase, and probably a bigger increase than a character like Noelle or Itto, but she also does less of the team's DPS, so it's like, yeah. Layla! I don't know, honestly. I think it's enough to go here. But just barely. Alright, Wanderer goes here. Faruzan. No real... Oh. If she's C6, she does a little bit of personal damage, so maybe it goes here. If she's not C6, it goes here. I'm gonna put her here, but just know that if she is C6 and you are building her for damage, then you can argue for this. Alhaitham goes in here. Yes, sir. Yao Yao. Yao Yao is interesting. There are some teams where it matters, but in a lot of teams it kind of just doesn't. Right? In Hyper Bloom teams, he doesn't really trigger Quicken, and you full heal at level 60, so like, who the fuck cares about the healing part, right? It matters if you're playing her in Nilo teams with Kanaka, because you're getting actual reactions on her. But if you're playing her in Nilo teams that don't have Kanaka, you don't tend to have Hydro Aura very much, and so she's not going to get a lot of reactions. And then in Quicken teams, she also doesn't get that many reactions because... She doesn't get that many reactions because of her special ICD, right? So I actually think it goes here. It doesn't matter that much. Why is Layla different from Zhongli? Because Layla's damage also scales with her levels. Zhongli doesn't do damage. Also, Layla's shield is a bit weaker, which means that it surviving is harder to do, and so getting it a bit stronger matters more. Right? Like, look at it this way, right? Let's say you get hit twice by an attack that does 10k damage, right? With Zhongli, leveling him wouldn't do anything. With Layla, if you're actually building her like HP Cryo Crit, her shield is gonna be what, like 12k, something like that? I don't know exactly. I don't remember, man. I guess it depends on cons too. But let's say you have a shield that goes from 12k to 13k, right? Then that makes the damage you take go from 8k to 7k, which is a lot easier to heal. To this day, I still don't understand why Hydro Swirl was made to be different than the rest of the elemental swirls. It might have been to preemptively nerf Electrocharge. Electrocharge is too good, but I don't know. Dehya! So if you're playing her as a carry, then it goes here. But... I mean, I guess it goes here anyways, because in teams where you're not playing her as a carry, sometimes you're getting reactions out of her. Alright, like with the Neuvillette team, you'll get like between 2 and 4 Burgeons per rotation on her. So it actually does matter. Maybe up to here, even in that Neuvillette team. But there's also teams where it doesn't matter at all, so I think here, kind of try to account for both, it's fine. Mika, no real point. He doesn't have personal damage, and he basically heals enough anyways. And again, right, he's an attack scaling healer, so levels on him don't really do that much in terms of increasing the healing. Baizhu is an HP scaling healer, though. And in many rotations, he only gets 1 E, and that can be a lot harder to actually full heal your team with that. On top of that, there are a few teams where he does trigger some spreads. So I think it matters a bit more, but I don't think it matters that much either, so I think it's still in here. Actually, no. I'm gonna put him in here. Wait, Mika's heals with HP? Wait, I'm Cornge. My bad. My bad. Okay, he goes here then. I forgot. My bad. My bad! My bad! I'm sorry. It matters less in Baizhu because Mika will full heal your non-HP scaling characters without level 90, right? Like, I have a... wait. Right? If you're looking at the healing on least healed characters, so your AoE healing for Mika at level 90 is about 17k. Without level 90, it's going to be like 16k. That full heals in a Farina team any character with like 30k HP or less. So it's basically everyone except Farina herself or other HP scalers on the team. And so getting that like 1k-ish increase healing you get from 80 to 90 will only really make a difference on one of your characters. With Baizhu, if you're only doing one skill, you're not healing nearly as much. And there's quite a few characters that don't full heal from 10k. Or that wouldn't full heal from like 9.34k. And that additional healing that you get from this matters a bit more. Right? Because you're not already full healing. It still doesn't matter that much, right? But it does matter a bit more. Alright, so Baizhu on a normal build, right, heals for about 10k on his skill. At level 90. I can actually take a look at how much it would be at level 80. 12, 4, 10. Yeah, 9.5k, right? And when you're not full healing, that's not 500 health on one character, like it is with Mika, right? Where, with Mika, you get that additional health on only characters that are not getting full healed. With Baizhu, there's more characters that are not getting full healed, so you get it on potentially all 4 of your characters. So it matters a bit more. It's still not that huge of a deal, but anyways. Kaveh! If you actually play him, sure. Kaveh doesn't really have a good team, though, so I don't know what team to evaluate him in. I'm sorry. Lynette tends to be more talent focused and reaction focused. So I think it'd go here. Oh, that's not Lynette. My bad. Kirara! Can trigger some Quicken. Doesn't tend to trigger that much. But the shield HP does matter. I'll put it in somewhat useful. Lenny, somewhat useful. Femina, okay, this is interesting because Femina does get some shatter in most of his teams, and shatter damage does scale with levels fairly well, but he doesn't really build EM, so the significantly higher base damage on shatter doesn't make that big of a difference because you're not building EM to capitalize on it. It's still a very small portion of his overall damage. So outside of that, it's just normal scaling. So he goes here. Neuvillette! Neuvillette goes here. Right? Similar to all the other HP scalers. It matters, but it doesn't matter an insane amount. Risley goes here. Farina, it matters if you level 10 Neuvillette's talents. You can do that at level 80. We're not talking about Ascension. We're talking about level from 80 out of 90 to 90 out of 90. So here's the thing about Farina, right? Unironically, she scales with levels a little bit less than, or a little bit worse than other direct HP scalers. Because her being higher HP means it's harder to full heal her. Which means that if you're playing her with healers that have slightly weaker healing, her having higher total HP makes you gain less fanfare stacks. Which is very funny. That being said, to offset that, she does have her passive that gives her damage percent based on total HP. So it still tends to be about as good as other HP scalers. But it is interesting that that mechanic is a thing. I think it's very funny. But like my Farina, right? If we look at my Farina stats, she's got basically 40k HP, which means when I play her in double Hydro, right? 43.780k, right? So if I my base HP 15. $15,307 HP percent 10.5 4.1 46.6 times 2 11.1 flat HP 4780 657 508 508 oh. Right? And then with Hydro Resonance, right? 43,786, 43,780, rounding error, whatever, good enough. Which means if she were level 80, 14,231, I would still max out the passive in teams where I have Hydro Resonance, right? Anyways, just an interesting thing. Obviously, if you have Constellation 2, you're also gonna max out the passive no matter what. But yeah. Next, Charlotte. I don't think there's a real point. I mean, fuck. Her base attack is so fucking low. You gain 12 base attack. 12. With the attack percent you're getting, that's like up to maybe 30 attack. Which is like 150 healing from this-ish. And then another 75 from this. 70, 75. So it's like a little bit over 200. I guess I should have looked at talent level 13. But still, right? Like the additional healing you get from 80 to 90 is so small that it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, right? So it's something that she has in common with most of the other attack scaling healers. It just doesn't matter much. And that's it! Because these characters aren't out yet. Although we might as well talk about them too. Navia would be here. Chevreuse would be here. There we go. Cool. If you're actually wondering about Travelers, Animo Traveler, either here or here, because you do get a decent amount of swirl damage. Geo Traveler in here. Electro Traveler, no real point. Hydro Traveler, maybe here, but that's hard to justify because the damage is so dog shit. Like, most of your damage is going to come from the rest of your team anyways, so you can make an argument for here. And then Dendro Traveler in Quicken teams, in here. In non-Quicken teams, here. Anyways, that does it for this list. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope this was entertaining.